Hi, it's HSM. What is going on? It's Nick coming at you again with week 3 of our series, Bad Blood. In week 1, we started out looking at sibling relationships, and this whole series is about relationships. So we started week 1 looking at Cain and Abel and the sibling rivalry that we can sometimes find ourselves in. Week 2, we got to look at dating relationships with David and Michal and kind of the problem with being unequally yoked with somebody. And if you haven't seen either of those messages, don't worry, they are on our IGTV, they're on our YouTube, so go and check them out. But we find ourselves today at week 3, and we're just gonna be going through the idea of friendship relationships, and maybe not even any friendship. We're gonna be talking about like your best friend relationships. All through middle school and high school, I had a best friend. His name was Blake, and we did literally everything together. I want you to think of your best friend. Think of all the stuff that you do together, under normal circumstances when we were able to go outside and go to the movies and all that stuff, but we would do everything. We would stay the night at each other's house. We would go camping. We would play video games. We would sit around the house. We would eat 3 whole pizzas in like 2 hours together. We would do everything together. Me and Blake always swore that we had like this code. If we ever got in trouble, we would bail each other out. We swore that if one of us needed help, that we could call the other person up and get bailed out of help. And this is kind of what we're going down, is this idea of betrayal. And I think it's really interesting because I had this situation with Blake where I managed to find myself in a little bit of trouble. And our code word, our code phrase for all of this was, I seriously need to ask you a question. That word seriously had to be inserted. It couldn't just be like, I need to ask you a question. It was, I seriously need to ask you a question. That's how we knew, oh, it's game time. This phrase meant business. It meant that by whatever means, you've got to do what you have to help your buddy out. And we were both on agreement of this. We had used it in the past. It totally worked, but I got myself in a little bit of trouble where my parents started questioning me about where I was the night before. And I told them, I was like, yo, I was just hanging out at our buddy Michael's house, playing video games. We walked to the grocery store around midnight to go get some snacks. And that's pretty much it. And they still didn't believe me. So I called up Blake. I was like, yo, I'm going to call Blake. I'll tell you exactly what happened. He's going to say the same thing. And so I called him. I ringing up the phone. He answers, hello. And I'm like, Blake, I seriously need to ask you a question. And he said, okay, fine, go for it. And I was like, okay, sweet. So I got this in the bag. Like, I'm not getting in trouble for this. Like, I'm clear. And so I told him, like, dude, like last night we were just hanging out at Michael's house, and then we went to the grocery store to get some snacks. We were playing video games, and that's pretty much it, right? And he was like, nah, dude, we went to that party and it was crazy and we didn't get back to my house until like 4. I was like, man, so I got in so much trouble. I got grounded for like 2 weeks. My parents were not happy because I was not supposed to go to that party, but my buddy Blake totally betrayed me, or so I thought. And I think what happens sometimes is we feel that we're being betrayed by a friend when we might not really be all that betrayed. I think we hold these feelings of resentment, we hold these feelings of frustration and anger towards our friends in these moments when it might not be justified. But good news is, like everything else, there's a story in the Bible for that. So we're gonna look at one of the most famous betrayals ever and look at 2 different approaches to it. We're gonna go into Luke chapter 22, verses 54 through 64. And it goes like this. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, this man was with him talking about Jesus, but he denied it. Woman, I don't know him, he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, you also are one of them. Man, I am not, Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean. Peter replied, Man, I don't know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. He wept bitterly. And I think what's crazy here is Jesus went through the same feeling of betrayal, not just by Peter, but he went through betrayal by Judas as well. So 2 of Jesus' closest friends betrayed him in the matter of like 24 hours. Like, that's a crazy statistic to think of. Like, I'm talking about my buddy not even remembering our code word to get ourselves out of trouble. But this is happening to Jesus, and it basically is after Peter has said, yo, I'll go to the end with you, Jesus. Like, I'm ready to die with you. I'm ready to go to prison for you. Like, all those things. And that's like what's going on here. Think of this. Peter is in Jesus' like inner circle, like of the 3 inner circle disciples. So you have like Peter, John, and James, like the closest friends. Of Jesus' closest friends, Peter denies even knowing Jesus, let alone trying to bail him out of trouble. See, if you were to put me in Jesus' shoes in this moment, I don't think I could forgive Peter. I don't think that I could forgive Peter for not even acknowledging that he knows me. After he's walked with Jesus day in, day out, seen him perform miracles, seen him do this, seen him do that, and then to go back on his word and say, nah, I don't know him. I don't know what you crazy people are talking about. I don't know Jesus. Like, that's nuts. That's crazy to think of. And I don't think that if I'm Jesus, that I would be able to forgive. In fact, I know that I wouldn't be able to forgive. It would be hard to forgive one of my best friends for denying even knowing me. My guess is that at one point in time, we have all been Peter here. We've all been that friend who has maybe betrayed a friend, whether on purpose or accidentally. My guess is that we all have done it at one point in time. I know I have. But let's focus here real quick on the other side of this. Let's focus on the side that Jesus has to play. See, if you keep on reading through Luke and we get towards the end of it, find out that after Jesus is crucified, after he resurrects from the dead, he forgives Peter. He forgives him and he gives him a second chance. He even goes to the lengths of saying, Peter, you are the one I'm going to build my church on. You are the rock that the church will be built upon. Like, that's even crazier to say, like, yo, I forgive you, but to go another step further and say, you are going to be the catalyst that's going to continue this thing. Maybe you don't need to go and ask for forgiveness. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're in Jesus' shoes and you don't need to ask a friend for forgiveness. But maybe you are that friend. So if you are that friend who needs to ask for forgiveness, maybe shoot a text to your friend. Shoot a call out. See if you can get that forgiveness. Let them know that you're sorry for any betrayal. Let them know that you want to make things better. Let them know that you just want any bad blood between you guys to not even be a thing. If someone has betrayed you, maybe you just need to get your heart ready to forgive. You know, we always looked at those silly wristbands, those silly bracelets that said WWJD, and it stood for what would Jesus do? And in these moments, you could see exactly what Jesus would do. Jesus would forgive. Jesus did forgive. And I think that that's so important for us to remember here. Some of you might need to call and ask a friend for forgiveness, but some of you might just need to be ready to forgive. Lose any grudge that you have, whatever it may be that you're holding against somebody. It might not be worth it. See, if you're not willing to forgive, that pain of holding on to that is just going to eat away at you. Forgiveness is something that'll set you free. Even if you're doing the one, or if you're the one who's forgiving, that forgiveness sets you free of any anger, any frustration, any sort of anguish towards another person. Me and my best friend Blake, we're no longer really friends. We just kind of went our separate ways. We still hung out, through the rest of high school, a little bit into college, but we just kind of drifted apart. But there's no bad blood between us. I don't know that we would really consider ourselves friends anymore. We don't hang out. I haven't spoken to the guy in years, but there's no bad blood between us. I hope that whatever that guy's doing, I hope that he is well. I hope that he is thriving. I still love the dude to death because, you know what? I've got, 7 years of my life that I spent best buddies with that guy. We did everything together. That guy's like a brother to me. And I would put money on it that if we were to hang out, we would just pick it back up where we left it. But that's all because of forgiveness. See, if I had held a grudge on my buddy for not knowing or following our code in that moment, had I known that all that would happen, if I just never forgave him, I don't think I'd be in this space. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that, yeah, we're not friends anymore, but I still love the guy. I choose to love my neighbor as my brother, and I choose to love him for all the experiences we have. And that's how I can remain loyal. See, in these moments, I challenge you guys, remain loyal by forgiving. Even if you don't remain friends with the person, at least you don't have to hold on to that grudge. At least you don't have to hold on to that feeling of bitterness towards another person. Choose loyalty. Choose to love your neighbor. Choose to love your friends. Love them the way that Jesus loves them. Love them unconditionally. That no matter what circumstance, no matter how wrong or how dirty they do you, just love them. Forgive them. And let that leave your heart. Let that bitterness leave and let Jesus enter in and just let that fill you with forgiveness and love. That's been week 3 for you guys. Love y'all. Hope to see y'all.